Alrighty, hey guys, welcome to F.U.E.L. And I'm honored to have a speaker today, Lieutenant Commander Amir Pishdad, who is a retired Navy SEAL. We've had him speak here before. It's always awesome. He's speaking a few days after Memorial Day, and he's going to talk to us about remembering and honoring sacrifice.
Thank you for this privilege, gentlemen, and to see a show of hands of how many here have had the opportunity and the honor of serving our great country in the military. Look at that, 99%. Well, listen, thank you very much. Memorial Day, remembering to honor the sacrifice. Armed Forces Day, by the way, is for those that are still in their uniform. Veterans Day is for those who have hung up their uniform. But Memorial Day is a special day to honor the sacrifice for those who never made it out of the uniform. That's why Memorial Day is not only special on that particular day, but especially for the families. It's an everyday event. I'm going to read to you a program that I did just a couple of days ago at the F.U.E.L. Cemetery for the American Legion, and honoring the veterans on Memorial Day. We had about 500 people in attendance, maybe a little more. An outstanding honor guard, flag guard, and even a 21-gun salute with taps. It was very emotional, and we even had a few Gold Star families that were in attendance. Thank you for joining me today, this morning, in the hollow ground to pay respect, to honor, and to remember the warriors of our nation who have given their all, so that we may enjoy and cherish the freedoms that those brave men and women who never made it out of their uniform, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. I'd like to take a moment and recognize those Gold Star families that were among us who have lost loved ones to this great nation. And I'd like to recognize those that are among us that are still serving, and all who are privileged to have had the opportunity to wear the uniform of our nation. To our Gold Star families, I ask them to look around. We have served alongside your loved one. We have fought in the fight with your loved one, and we have become family. For we are your brothers and sisters, and we are humbled by your sacrifice, as we know that they are great as you struggle every day to face your loss, not just on Memorial Day. Know that from a grateful nation, while we set aside this day to honor the memory of all who have given everything for their country, we too share your pain, as we shall never forget our fellow American soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines who have paid with their lives while serving our nation. Now imagine, if you will, this scenario. The day was like every other. The sun was peaking its brilliant rays to warm a crisp, cool morning. It was on a normal street in any town, USA, lined with maple trees, early fall, and the wind whispering through the leaves, so many which have turned and fallen to the ground. Traffic was light as usual in the suburban community, with the sound of a local newspaper boy riding his creaking bike and the noise of the hurling the morning newspaper onto the porches of homes. A mother was getting ready. Her family for breakfast was about to be started, encouraging her two boys, 8 and 6, and a sweet little 5-year-old girl to hurry up dressing and come down and enjoy a meal, but not before making their beds and picking up their rooms. Remember, she shouts, you make your father proud. He wouldn't want you to forget starting your day without doing your chores first. And as she opens the refrigerator door, recent photos sent by her husband, smiling and laughing, reminded her of his love for her and his family. And as she reminisces and reflects on the photographs, listening to the children in the background, giggling and laughing, she doesn't notice the dark sedan that is pulled out front of the home, and 2 uniformed soldiers have stepped out. Without notice, there's a knock at the front door, and what was cheerfully the morning sunshine, fall colors, and sounds of children, thoughts of her husband, soon turns her and her family's world upside down. Arrangements are made and soon this family, with other family, friends, and neighbors and service members, are graveside to witness and partake in a highly decorated ceremony that no family wishes to be part of. Yet time and time again, this ceremony is happening throughout our country. Throughout the history of this great nation, over 26 million brave Americans, citizens have accepted the challenge to join the armed forces and have taken the oath to serve our nation armed forces, with over 1.1 million making the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. I do not believe that any of us take the oath to sign up to pay the ultimate sacrifice when we join the military, for it was to serve the nation, to wear the uniform with pride, and conduct the business of defending our Constitution and the values envisioned by our founding fathers. It was a sense of patriotism. We embarked on a journey of service to our country, dedicated to the American way of life. We always acknowledged that a different outcome was a possibility. And it was not something we discussed. It was not something we dwelled on, but an outcome we acknowledged each in our own way. Decoration Day, as it was originally referred to, from the early tradition of decorating graves with flowers and wreaths and flags, that this day was widely observed on May 30th, 1868, the last Monday of May, to commemorate the sacrifices of Civil War soldiers and sailors 53 years ago. The World Wars turned into a generalized day of remembrance, and instead of just the Civil War, in 1971, the Congress renamed it Memorial Day and changed its observance to honor all who died in uniform. Today we gather at cemeteries, in fields, in town squares, along city streets, to honor the sacrifices, to remember those we have lost. Brave men and women serving in uniform have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we and citizens of the world can continue to cherish the values we hold dear of freedom, country, and family.
Amen.
When I was asked to talk today, I was hesitant to speak about my teammates, that I was privileged to have served alongside who have made the ultimate sacrifice. To speak about my fallen teammates is not always the easiest, but it is an opportunity to honor our brave warriors and heroes, and my teammates.
Amen.
Outweighs any concerns. I believe it is our sacred duty to remember the sacrifices of all generations to ensure that they are respected with the honor and dignity they have earned and deserve. And throughout my 20-year Navy career, I was honored to serve with some incredible heroes. In 1975, Ensign Dave Griffin, a Citadel distinguished graduate, one of my Navy UDT SEAL Class 80 classmates. He was also my first assistant platoon commander in the Underwater Demolition Team 21, and he was my drinking buddy. Ensign Griffin was almost 3 years older than myself, was constantly inspiring me with his positivity, firm leadership to seek responsibility that eventually led to my becoming a Navy SEAL officer. Later, Lieutenant Griffin, taking his own advice, sought for greater opportunities in the Navy. He led the Navy parachute demonstration team, and called the Shooting Stars, and eventually became a fighter pilot of an F-14A Tomcat. And it was during a training mission on July 29, 1982, that Dave, only 30 years old, and his RIO, radar intercept officer, Neil Cookies Carlock, experienced an in-flight emergency shortly after takeoff from Oceana, Virginia. I can only imagine how Cookie got his name, from flying in the back seat with the pilot going here and there with the aircraft, enough to cause anybody to lose their cookies. But instead of immediately jetting over a populated area, they stayed with their aircraft to get it over a marsh, which was descending at a high rate of speed, but it was too fast to safely deploy their parachutes. Neither survived the incident, and they were part of the Fighter Squadron 101 VF 101, also called the Grim Reapers. I am constantly reminded of Dave's cheerful and southern drawl voice that echoes in my mind, "Never quit, Pish. I believe in you." Wow, he was a great leader and a great inspiration to me. It was while I was a young ensign that I qualified as an SDV, which stands for Swimmer Delivery Vehicle, the mini submarines, pilot and navigator. However, due to an operation tempo, I was selected to be an assistant platoon commander of an UDT SEAL platoon. My seat for the SDV platoon was assigned to my teammate, Ensign William, we called him Robbie, Robinson. Robbie was an energetic, smart, and very talented Navy SEAL. We often trained together and spent much quality time learning our craft. In January 1982, after a vacuum was inadvertently drawn in a chamber on the submarine of the USS Grayback, SSG 574, both Robbie and Petty Officer Richard Bond, along with 3 of the submarine divers, passed out and drowned while locking back into the submarine. Had I not been selected for another assignment, I would have been in Robbie's seat. The job of a Navy SEAL is very demanding, challenging, extremely dangerous, with assignments that challenge all of the extremes. Today at the Navy SEAL Museum, which was this past weekend on Monday, during the very moment I was speaking at the cemetery, the names of 9 Navy SEAL teammates were being unveiled to add over 300 names of Navy frogmen since World War II that have made the ultimate sacrifice in the past year. There are some warriors I think about this Memorial Day. These are some of the warriors I think about this Memorial Day. These are my heroes who gave their all to bring freedom to the world. Now, I encourage each of you to get to know the stories with our community, because we have heroes here with incredible histories on hallowed grounds throughout Brevard County. As we come together to honor the memory of fallen warriors, men and women who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, we must recommit to honoring their legacy by continuing to build a community and country for which they would be proud. We must work together with friends, neighbors, veterans, and our community to ensure that their sacrifices made by these men and women, our nation's finest and the bravest, never go unappreciated and are forever remembered through our actions. The cost of freedom is steep, and we must remember it's only possible because these fallen warriors have paid a high price. We must work together to forge a future that upholds the ideals of freedom for which the ultimate sacrifice was paid. Memorial Day is an opportunity to honor that sacrifice and remember the stark reality in which our way of life has been shaped and molded. It's been forged in fire and has been made possible by those who served, especially those who were lost. I want to thank the F.U.E.L. organization for asking me to be here today. I want to thank everyone you here today that pays tributes to our nation's bravest warriors. But I ask you to please keep our military, our Gold Star families, and our nation close to your heart and throughout the year. God bless our comrades, our families, their communities. May God protect our service members stationed around the world and the United States of America. Let me give a phrase here from John 15:13. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends.
Amen.
And I believe that's kind of much sums it up of why we take that oath for this country to defend everyone that lives in it. Does everyone here, anyone here ever been at a cemetery and seen the American flag being folded over? It's laid upon the casket. It may even come with the casket. It's taken off and it's folded. But do you know the symbolism behind the folds of that? Let me refresh your memory. Now this is what I'm going to say is basically an interpretation of those folds, which represents the American flag, as you know, represents important symbols of the United States. It represents respect, honor, and freedom. And many say that our flag represents a reflection of courage and sorrow. The United States Borough flag drapes the casket of the deceased to honor the veteran memory of their service to our country. The ceremonial folding of the present flag is a moving tribute to the lasting importance to that veteran's family. Our nation's flag, the country's symbol of liberty and freedom, is ceremoniously most honorably laid upon the casket, lifted, and surrendered to the widows or widowers. It's folded 13 times to symbolize the original 13 colonies. And each fold carries its own meaning, symbolization, and tribute. And if I may, let me articulate an interpretation of those folds. The first fold is a symbol of life. And the second fold is a symbol of the belief in eternal life as God teaches us. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veteran departing the ranks who gave a portion of their lives for the defense of the country to attain peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents trusting in God, for it is to Him we turn in times of peace as well in times of war for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is the tribute to our country. The sixth fold is where American hearts lie. It is with their heart that they pledge allegiance to the flag. The seventh fold is a tribute to the armed forces. The eighth, a tribute to one who entered the valley of the shadow of death, that we might see the light of day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood and mothers, for it's been through their faith, their love and loyalty and devotion, that a character of a man and of men and women who have made this country great have been molded. Equally a tribute is a tenfold to the Father, for He too has given His sons and daughters for the defense of their country. The 11th fold represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon, and glorifies the Hebrew eyes, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold represents an emblem of eternity, glorifies God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the 13th fold. When the flag is completely folded, the stars are the uppermost, reminding all nations the motto, "In God we trust."
Amen. Amen.
After the flag is completely folded and tucked, it takes an appearance of a cocked hat that reminds us of the soldiers who served under General George Washington, and the sailors and Marines who served under Captain John Paul Jones, who were followed by the comrades and shipmates on the armed forces of the United States, preserving for them the rights and privileges and freedoms that we enjoy today. It's my hope in the future that when you have the opportunity and the privilege to witness our nation's flag folded in honor of a veteran, especially one who's made the ultimate sacrifice, you will cherish its hollow meaning. Last night I got a telephone call from the wife of one of my very dear classmates that I went to high school with. Did not serve in the armed forces, but he has most appreciatively has honored my service and everyone who has served this great country. He was killed yesterday morning in a motorcycle accident. Lost control on a curve and crashed through a fence and was instantly killed. It's not easy losing anyone that's dear to you, especially, I can tell you, teammates. And these three teammates that I told you about are not the only ones. But let me tell you something about that submarine accident. A mini submarine was locking into basically like a big cigar case on the back of a submarine. They closed the hatch. It's watertight sealed, and they start draining the water. Now, if you know anything about physics, if you take a closed container and you take the water out of it, you end up with a vacuum. And in order to compensate for a vacuum, you open a valve to let a vent of air come in to compensate for the volume of water that's leaving that chamber. When I got assigned to the Water Demolition Team 11 as an ensign, I was also designated to be the diving officer of the team. What a great privilege that was for me, because I joined the Navy because of watching programs like Sea Hunt, Lloyd Bridges. Jacques Cousteau, and that famous movie called The Frogman with Richard Widmark. And I got inspired and said, this is the kind of life I want. And I started scuba diving at the age of 16. And at age 17, I joined the Navy. And right after my high school graduation, I came into the Navy. And I just wanted to do something about that involved diving. And here now I'm 25 years old. And I've been already served in two special warfare teams. It's called Naval Special Warfare Underwater Demolition Team 21 and SEAL Team 2. I got the opportunity to become the diving officer of the team. I had a lot of other positions as well, but that was really a dream come true for me. Well, I was not on that particular submarine operation, but my job as a diving officer is to ensure that the script, everything that we're following step by step is being followed. But unknown to the diving officer on the submarine at that particular moment on that submarine, a faulty vent valve, when they opened it up, it was actually broken, and they did not realize it had not been maintained, not been checked, and that vent valve failed to open the vent. So when these huge suction vacuums were sucking the water out of this big cigar chamber, which a submarine, barely fits inside of, as the water was descending, it was creating a vacuum, taking the atmosphere within the submarine to a high altitude. And if you know about high altitudes and pilots, when you become a SEAL, you learn to appreciate high altitude and lack of oxygen, because they take you intentionally and they put you in a hyperbaric chamber, and they take you to high altitude and you take your mask off, and you go to just about to pass out, so you understand the feeling. But I believe this happened so quickly and so unexpectedly, it wasn't on the radar. And so, of the 4 ship's divers, 3 of the divers passed out, and my 2 teammates passed out, and they drowned in the remaining water that was in the tank till they could get it down. And at some point, they realized on the inside of the dry side of the submarine that tragic had just taken place, and they had to wait until the water was drained before they could open the door. Otherwise, all that water would come right inside the sub. Bond's brother, who was one of my teammates, there was 3 Bond brothers in the teams, was on the dry side of the submarine when this occurred. This was his youngest brother that was lost that day. The 4th ship's diver survived the incident because his equipment, his vest he was wearing, hung up on a piece of equipment, maybe one of the valves inside the submarine, and it kept his head falling in the water, so he simply passed out. So they were able to get inside there fast enough to revive him, or at least reduce the pressure and get air back into the chamber. But not before the 5 individuals had lost their lives. It doesn't matter if it's actual combat or training combat. Everything that we do as a SEAL team is as if it's the real McCoy. So I just ask you guys to keep in mind of all that serve this great nation, that unfortunately there are training incidents that occur that have to be as real as possible, that people lose their lives. And it's for the greater good, for the all, because we learn valuable lessons from these losses. As tragic as it is for the families and for the teammates and for the friends and other sailors and soldiers, it still has a purpose, and it helps to save other lives. Now, does anybody have any questions that you'd like me to address? Yes, sir.
Just addressing your flagpole. Last Wednesday, I attended a service up at the National Cemetery. And I know maybe some of you have never been up there and seen that cemetery. Beautiful. Ceremonies beautiful.
The Mims Cemetery?
Yes.
Mims?
Yeah, it's Scottsmore.
Yes.
Scottsmore, yeah.
Okay.
What a wonderful place. That's where I'm going. I've already made arrangements for that.
Well, I know where I'm going. I'm going to be cremated, and my ashes going to be spreading in a ceremony that we do once a year down at the SEAL Team Museum, in which we spread the ashes of fallen frogmen by other frogmen. They carry your ashes out to the ocean. They dump them out there, and hey, it's a very fitting place, because in 1943, a commander, a Navy commander, was requested to start training men how to plant explosives to detonate obstacles on the beaches of Normandy that was planned for a year later. So in June of 1943, in preparation for June landing in 1944, men were trained very quickly, and they became what's called the Naval Combat Demolition Unit. Right there at Fort Pierce, Florida, right on the beach on A1A. On that very hollow ground where men trained is where the amphibious base used to be located, is now a museum, and it's a National Museum, Navy National SEAL Museum, and memorial, because we have a granite wall there with the names of over 300 teammates, now close to 310 or so, that are now on that wall that have lost their lives either in combat or training.
That's in Fort Pierce.
That's in Fort Pierce, Florida.
That's not a hard trip from here.
Not a long trip. And if this organization would like some point to plan a trip down there, I'd be most honored to accompany you, give you a personal tour of the chronological history as you walk through. Inside is a lot of memorabilia from actual equipment that's actually been used. The lifeboat that was on the Alabama Maersk, that Captain Phillips was rescued, is actually there, bullet holes and all. There's a helicopter that was there. Black Hawk helicopter was actually flown in and retired by the Army, given to the museum. That was actually carried Jessica Lynch out of harm's way. That as it turns out, the people, it wasn't announced, but the people that saved her were Navy SEALs. There's just a lot of history there, going all the way back to the beginning and the initial commitment of men in the Western Pacific, South Pacific, going out to all around the world, even up into space. And we currently have 3 astronauts that are former Navy SEALs. In fact, the first commanding officer of the International Space Station was Bill Shepard, a Navy SEAL. And I believe that Captain Shepard is now retired. Captain Lindsay, it's not Captain Lindsay, Christie, right? I think that's right. Anyway, is it right? That he's just announced his retirement, and he's been up in International Space Station 3 times, almost just over a year total time, I believe. And we've got another officer, Shu, that I think that's his last name, and he has gone through the ranks of becoming enlisted, became a doctor, has gotten commissioned and in the Navy, and got selected for the astronaut team. So I think the only position we haven't done yet is be president.
What do we each now, brother?
Another rescue mission.
I'm going to give you a couple more pieces of history. Take a couple more minutes here. 1943 is when the training started, and we came up Naval Combat Demolition Units. When the Pacific Theater, and we had to battle the Japanese, and we were making a landing on and we're conquering the islands in the South Pacific. The first landing was at Tarawa, and aircraft were used to reconnoiter the area, looking for an approach to bring the landing craft in to land the Marines. The Navy guys are trained that when the boat hits solid ground, down goes the ramp. Marines are trained that when the ramp goes down, out they go. So the boat's coming in quite a few distance from the actual shore, sit solid ground, down goes the ramp, out go the Marines, down went the Marines. They were too deep of water. It was very tragic. They lost over 1,500 men. Those that didn't drown were eventually shot by the Japanese. And because of that, it was decided that they needed physical bodies to go in and reconnoiter the area, the approach, look for proper places to go in, and if necessary, plant explosives to clear the way so that the boats could go in and drop off the different waves of Marines into the amphibious landing. Unlike that of Normandy, in Normandy, the guys just basically swam ashore because the obstacles were all known. At low tide, there was all these obstacles, and they knew they had to go in there and plant the explosives so that at high tide, when the boats could come in at the furthest shore, they could go in without being damaged, okay? And so they could go back out and keep making repeated attempts to bring more Marines into and soldiers into the ground, onto the beaches. So then, because of Tarawa, they took it was asked, okay, who do we got that can swim, do demolitions, and they go, hey, we got these guys, they're wearing these wetsuits and they got this mask and fins, kind of look like frog. We call them frogmen. And so they changed the name to the Underwater Demolition Team. In 1962, John F. Kennedy, in his quest to how to attack and how to handle the Vietnam situation, he looked around the different armed forces, being a Navy man himself, and said, what do we got in the Navy that we can go inland and do some of these different missions? You know, capture some of our prisoners, soldiers been taken prisoner, do some different inland demolitions, reconnoiter, look for different enemy positions. And they said, well, we got just the guys. We're training them right now. So they took guys from the Underwater Demolition Team and they created, and they said, where can these guys go? Where they can go in the sea, the air, and the land. So we'll call them SEALs. That's what SEAL stands for, sea, air, and land. And so SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2, commissioned by John F. Kennedy in January 1962, happened. 13 years later, I graduated from Bud's class number 80, the 80th class in succession from when it all started on the West Coast. And in our class, we had 19 original guys that started. We had 59 guys that started initially. In 2 weeks, we lost 40 guys. But when we started Hell Week, and when we finished Hell Week, we still had the same 19 guys, one Peruvian officer, and we graduated training with everybody. The only class that's ever done that, 5 months later. And we gained in 6 more guys to make total 25 that eventually graduated and put on the Navy SEAL Trident. Which, by the way, the SEAL Trident's what I have here, but if you can see my belt buckle, this is the actual size. This is actual Trident. So it's actually it's pretty unique and it's very big. It actually has 4 components. Okay, it's got a Navy anchor, which represents Navy tradition and naval service. It has a flintlock pistol, which represents saboteurs going back to the days of the OSS in the Revolutionary War, Civil War. Guys that went behind the lines carrying flintlock pistols, because those were the concealed weapons. It's in the cock position, means we're always ready. The third item is Neptune's trident. All right, and that represents the 3 spears represent honor, courage, and commitment. Now, this emblem I just described to you, those 3 components, was what eventually the Underwater Demolition Team came up as their insignia. And it didn't last long, but it was a pewter-colored silver for enlisted and gold for officers. Later, when John F. Kennedy commissioned SEAL Team 1 and 2, they added the eagle for the 4th element on the insignia. And again, they had silver for enlisted, gold for officers. But it didn't last long, because the analogy was our training is one of the only trainings in the country in which both enlisted and officers go through the same training at the same time together. So why should we distinguish one over the other? And it was agreed, and they made everything gold. When I graduated in January 1975, on the 24th day, it was at that point the gold trident. And that's what we still have today. In order to become a member of the teams, as we call it, you had to be, in order to make an advancement in rank, you had to be a rating within the military. Now, in the Navy, we call it ratings, and the Army, and they call it MOS. I'm not sure what they call it in the Marine Corps or the Air Force, but you know what I'm talking about. You have to have a certain job description, which makes that branch of service work. So in the Navy, you got electrician mates, which is what I ended up choosing. And I chose it after I had already been in the teams. because it was not required that I had to have the rating. But I had to know the rating in order to advance, regardless that I wasn't working it, but I was still a SEAL. It did give me some extra qualification points to help me along, just like the regular sailors who earn their warfare specialty that helps to maintain at the optimum level the ship's performance. It's called surface warfare insignia. And they have them for both enlisted officers. But I will tell you that the enlisted still today, they wear pewter and the officers wear gold in the surface warfare. But the SEAL team all wears the gold. In 1983, on the 1st of May, the underwater demolition team name was redesignated as all SEAL teams. We had 3 underwater demolition teams at that time. So we redesignated the SEAL teams, and that name went away, underwater demolition team. It's been 38 years since that happened. And I don't think that there's a single individual that's still serving today that has been in both an underwater demolition team and a SEAL. And on my business card, it says UDT SEAL, because I'm very proud to have served in both, have become a Navy frogman and to become a SEAL.
Very cool.
In 2006, and I don't know exactly which month, the requirement to have a rating on the outside of the Navy in order to advance changed. And what they did is that they took the advice of the leadership, which has been asking for years, to make SEAL team a rating. So you got rated and promoted based on your performance as a SEAL, which I believe has helped a lot of individuals come up through the ranks significantly and faster. But why not? Because when you're working side by side with an officer, the only difference between you and the officer is the rank. You're both highly trained to do each other's job, to take over any position at any time. And so, so now the insignia, and you still have 3rd, 2nd, and 1st class petty officers and chief petty officers, but now it's called SO for special operations, and they use the SEAL trident is the insignia there. It's the one I described to you without the eagle. Okay, because we're keeping the heritage of Navy frogmen always alive. Many great frogmen, legendary guys that have served, both enlisted as an officer and several become admirals, have always stated that we can never get too far away from the water where our roots always came from, because one day we may have to go back to it again. And we'll always be prepared. So you can never forget the basic fundamentals of any position in the armed forces. Everything always starts with the basic. You always go back to those fundamentals. Now let me just close and say that I believe that that God gives us talents to do His work, and everybody has a specific ability to do it. And if you work hard enough, you find that niche, something that you can perform well. I have a saying that when people ask me how hard was it to become a SEAL, and I want to be very honest about it, because I think that for me, it was super exciting. It was a thrill, it was an unbelievable dream, but I was talented enough to do it. And let me put it this way. Doug Williams was the first black quarterback, Super Bowl MVP, Washington Redskin champion, first. And I had a chance to play golf with him a number of years ago, 2017, and we were golf partners. And I was using a special wheelchair adapter for my spine, which recently I've had 2 major surgeries to help me out of that chair. And he looked at me and he said, "They tell me that you're a Navy SEAL." And I said, "Sir, they tell me you're a professional football player." He says, "But you're a Navy SEAL." I said, "Mr. Williams, you are the MVP, Super Bowl, first black quarterback, Washington Redskin, major champion. You are an awesome guy." He goes, "Yeah, but you are a Navy SEAL." I said, "So let me just ask you 2 questions. He said, when I asked him, when you're learning to become a football player in high school, in college, and even in the early days in the pros, I know that the training that they conduct is extremely arduous. I mean, it's hard, it's tough, okay? A lot of people don't make it. A lot of people quit early in life because they can't handle that type of thing, but yet they persevere. And so tell me, every day you got up to go to training, you could hardly wait to do it because you had an insatiable appetite that you wanted more of that excitement, that thrill, that challenge. He goes, yeah, how do you know this? He says, yeah, every time we went for practice, every time I've ever done it, it's always been the same. I said, okay, now hold that thought. Let me just ask you one more question. Every night before every game you ever played, tell me that when you put your head on your pillow, you could hardly go to sleep because you were so excited for what was about to happen the next day. He said, are you reading my mind? He says, but that's every game I ever played. I said, well, Mr. Williams, we're no different. We just had different focuses, okay? So how hard is it to be a professional football player, an engineer, a doctor? It doesn't matter what the blank is, even a Navy SEAL. I say it's only as hard as you make